All right, hello and welcome to this training. As you can see from the title, what we're going to be covering today is the graph that predicts your future. And as you can see from the overview, what we're going to be talking about more specifically is obviously first the overview itself, then the truth about time, the trap of short-term thinking, the law of compounding choices, second order consequences, the hidden mechanics of memory, the review, and then your action items for the day or the next few days. So with that being said, let's just start and talk about the truth about time. So most people completely misunderstand time and they treat it like it's a straight line from point A to point B, as if what you do today and what you get today should always be linked and should always align. But that's not how time actually works when it comes to results or when it comes to most things. Time works more like a delayed echo. You shout into the canyon and for a while you hear absolutely nothing, and then suddenly, all at once, the sound comes back roaring. And so this is why people feel like they're doing everything right, but nothing is really happening because they don't realize that time is always delayed. Every action you take today will fade from your memory within weeks, but its consequences won't even really begin to show up until months or years later. So if I asked you what you ate for lunch last week on Wednesday, you have already probably forgotten. In the same way, you'll forget going to the gym for a week straight, you'll forget that salad you ate, and you'll forget the 10 pages you read in that book. Now, your memory will discard most of the micro decisions you made because the brain only keeps what feels urgent or dramatic, at least in the moment. But those tiny forgettable decisions keep echoing and they stack and they sink into your trajectory. And when the good habits don't yield instant validation, rewards, or results, you'll feel like they don't really matter. But that feeling is a trap. The real return is simply waiting in the shadows of time. Time flips the cause-effect relationship on its head. Most people assume their current situation is a result of what they've done recently, but that's almost never true. The success you're seeing today was bought and paid for by the effort you forgot you even gave. Your life today is a result of what you did 3, 5, or even 10 years ago. And now, if the results in your life are not satisfactory, well, the pain you're living in is the invoice for laziness you swore didn't matter at the time. And so, good or bad, the results you have now are a result of the actions you took 3, 5, 10 years ago, or even more, depending on your age, or even less. So it could be from a year ago. And because of this, people look at their current life and they blame the wrong things. They blame the job, the partner, the economy, but the root is usually buried deep in forgotten choices made long ago. You live inside the timeline of invisible decisions. Every moment is either building or decaying your future. There's no neutral, there's no pause button. Every day you're either setting the direction toward a reality you want or one you'll regret waking up inside. Time doesn't just pass, it compounds. And what you do once may seem small, but what you do daily becomes destiny. So imagine two lines on a graph. One line is how well you remember what you did. The other is how much return you get from it. In the beginning, your memory is high and results are low. You just started meditating, for example, so you remember every session, but you feel like it's doing absolutely nothing. Then years go by and you're calm, focused, and emotionally centered, but you don't even remember how it started. You don't even associate it with the decision of you starting to meditate every single day. This is where most people lose the game. They give up early while memory is still high, but results haven't really kicked in yet. They start believing it's all pointless right before the curve was about to explode upward. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction, but nobody tells you the reaction is often separated by time. So you meditate and expect calm. You eat clean and expect fat loss. You work hard and expect money. But the body, the bank account, the business, they all move slower than your ego wants them to. That delay breeds bitterness. People start to think this doesn't work, but it's not that it doesn't work, it's that it hasn't worked yet. And so if you don't understand time's delay, you'll fall into patterns of sabotage. Just one day off, just one more episode, it won't make a difference, and so on and so on. The absence of immediate consequences tricks you into thinking there are no consequences at all. But every small indulgence is planting a seed, and all seeds grow, good or bad, just on time delay. So eventually the lines cross, memory drops, results explode, and this is when people start winning. They don't remember the work. They're just swimming in the reward. But others fall into victimhood. They forgot all the neglect, the shortcuts, the bad habits. Now they're overweight, broke, anxious, and convinced it just happened to them. That amnesia leads to blame, and blame leads to paralysis. So when you understand time, you stop demanding results now. You start to see every right decision as a down payment on a future you'll be proud to live inside. You reclaim power because you stop playing for today and start building 5 years out. It's not about intensity, it's about repetition. You win by compounding the right moves until the graph flips in your favor. So if you don't get this, nothing else works. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how hard you work, how many goals you write down. If you don't respect time's delay, you will break yourself against it. But once you respect it, that's when the game bends in your favor. You start planting seeds without needing to see sprouts tomorrow. You move with calm, calculated trust in the long game. And the more you keep stacking those seeds, the more unstoppable you become, because the real power isn't in the result. It's in the becoming the kind of person who keeps acting in alignment long before the rewards show up. That's when your life becomes untouchable. And now it's time to look at the biggest reason most people never actually reach that point. Let's talk about the trap of short-term thinking. So most people lose not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, but because they've been hypnotized by the now. They've been trained by their phones, their feeds, and their culture to believe that everything valuable should show up immediately or it isn't worth it for one reason or another. So when they eat clean for 3 days and the scale doesn't move, they quit. When they journal for a week and they still feel anxious, they drop it. When the business doesn't explode in 30 days, they call it a bad idea, not realizing that they're playing a long game with a short-term brain. The modern world has completely broken your calibration for reward and timelines. Scroll through social media and notice what really gets rewarded. A flashy transformation, a 6-figure month, a perfect relationship. You're never shown the 5 years of silence behind it, the 5 years of pure work. And this trains your brain to expect transformation without effort, victory without cost, and growth without patience. So you keep jumping from one thing to the next, thinking the next thing will finally work, when the truth is, and sorry to break this to you, nothing works without time. Instant gratification isn't just a preference anymore, it's an addiction. And most people jump from business idea to business idea, from relationship to relationship, from partner to partner, all sorts of things. Every dopamine hit you chase, such as likes, messages, food, corn, noise, all of them pull you deeper into a reward loop that makes everything hard feel impossible. And like any addiction, the more you feed it, the less effective it becomes. Now, even the easy wins don't feel good anymore. So when you try to delay gratification and do the right thing, it feels like you're suffering. Not because it is suffering, but because your system is so wired for speed and now and everything, everywhere, all at once, it panics without that hit. So short-term thinking creates a cycle of self-destruction. You chase the quick win, you get the sugar rush, then crash emotionally. Then you beat yourself up for falling off track, and that guilt drives more impulsive choices to numb the shame. And you stay trapped in this loop for years, wondering why you're stuck, wondering what is going on, and why do you feel like you're reliving the same year over and over again. The reason is you zoom in too close. You stare at one workout, you stare at one meal, one conversation, one sales call, and then obsess over the lack of return. Look, you can't see the macro trend because you're emotionally reacting to micro fluctuations. That's like planting a seed, watering it once, and then digging it up to see why it hasn't grown. You tell yourself it's not working when the truth is you didn't give it enough time to work. Left unchecked, your mind will always default to what's easy now. It will always default to the path of least resistance, because short-term thinking doesn't require discipline. It doesn't require vision. It's automatic. It's reactive. You'll choose the couch over the gym, the scroll over the book, the cookie over the plan, not because it's better, but because it's faster. And every time you choose ease over effort, you slowly chip away at your own potential without even realizing it. This kind of mindset, it seeps in, it becomes a habit. And so the most dangerous thing about short-term thinking is how good it is at justifying itself. I deserve it. One time won't hurt. I'll start Monday. It makes bad decisions feel logical. It makes sabotage feel like self-care. It disguises destruction as kindness and makes you believe you're doing something helpful when really you're just quitting quietly. And most people don't realize how dangerous it is to actually abandon something just because the result isn't immediate. Not seeing results instantly makes you abandon things that were actually working, and every time you quit early, you train your nervous system and your brain to just distrust consistency and to keep doing that. You teach yourself that effort equals disappointment, and that's the root of hopelessness. Now, most people think that habits are just physical things we do, but habits can be patterns of thought, and you're training yourself to think this way. Winning in life requires a total rewiring of how you relate to time. You have to stop expecting fast, stop chasing now, stop worshiping speed, stop worshiping perfection. Instead, build for what's 5 years out, 10 years out. Make decisions your future self will thank you for, not just tolerate. Not passive patience either, active patience, strategic, committed, fire in your belly patience that keeps you going even when nothing's happening yet. This is where things start to click because once you see the trap of short-term thinking for what it is, you can actually break it. You can stop choosing what feels good today and start choosing what creates power tomorrow. But for that to actually stick, you need to understand the engine behind all of it, the invisible law that basically multiplies everything. And it's what we'll go into next. So let's talk about the law of compounding choices. So everything in your life is a result of something small that kept repeating. Literally everything. Nothing huge, nothing dramatic, just one choice made quietly over and over again. Sometimes those choices are actually even unconscious. One scroll instead of one page, one snack instead of one rep, one snooze instead of one step. And that one choice got multiplied until it became a pattern, and the pattern became an identity, and the identity became your reality. And the scariest part is most people don't even notice it's happening. Compounding is the most underrated force in the world, in the universe. It doesn't roar, it whispers. It builds quietly in the background while you're distracted by what feels urgent and novel and new and cool. It never announces itself. You won't see a warning a sign that basically says this decision will shape your next 5 years, but it will. The 1% better or worse today may feel like nothing until it's over 300% better or worse in a year. And that's why tiny shifts done consistently are more dangerous and more powerful than giant leaps done occasionally. Compounding itself isn't good or bad, it's neutral. It will multiply whatever you feed it. Feed it distraction and it will multiply your regret. One night of comfort becomes a week, then a year, then a decade of compromise. You wake up one day and you don't even recognize yourself, not because of one big failure, but because of thousands of tiny moments where you looked away. You basically died of 1,000 cuts. But feed it alignment and it will build you a life so solid that it can't be shaken by circumstance. One day of reading becomes a sharper mind, one cold shower becomes a hardened will, one brutal workout becomes unshakable confidence. The curve doesn't grow linearly, it actually explodes, it's exponential. At first, it's so slow that you think nothing is really happening, and that's where most people actually quit. But if you stay consistent long enough, it reaches a point where everything takes off all at once. You start seeing compounding wins, more focus, deeper relationships, faster decisions, more money, more confidence, and a lot of the times you don't even remember what caused it. And people around you will say, wow, you changed so fast, even though it took years. Because the growth didn't happen fast, it just showed up suddenly. It just became noticeable fast. One upgraded decision never stays in isolation. Going to the gym doesn't just build muscle, it upgrades how you eat, how you sleep, how you carry yourself. And saying no to one distraction strengthens your ability to say no to dozens more. That one new habit doesn't just change your body, it leaks into business, your discipline, your relationship, your income, and everything is connected. Everything intersects. Every single thing. Once the compounding engine kicks in, success becomes hard to stop. You'll hit a point where it takes more effort to regress than to keep rising. You're just moving forward by default, and good decisions feel normal now, not heroic. Not because it got easier, but because you got stronger. You've built a system that basically sustains itself. And there's always a gap between action and payoff. This is the part where the world filters winners from wishers. Can you endure that awkward stretch where you're doing all the right things but nothing seems to be happening? If you can hold the line there when others drop off, you basically win by default. And that's not motivation, that's just belief. The compound effect isn't built on breakthroughs, it's built on dailies. Wake up time, cold shower, workout, tracking, writing, silence, reading. One behavior reinforces the next and you start stacking wins before 8 a.m. Eventually, you don't even need to think about it. You just move and movement wins. You are the architect of your own slope. The only difference between success and stagnation is the degree of your slope. Are you trending up or are you trending down? And you get to decide the inputs, which means you control the compounding. That means you're never actually stuck. Just one better choice today will shift your whole trajectory. So if you understand this law, you've already outgrown 90% of people, because most people are still trying to leap, still trying to hack, still trying to shortcut. But now you know real power isn't actually sudden. It's slow, it's boring, it's very, very repetitive, and that's what makes it inevitable. And once you master this law, one thing can either accelerate your life or quietly destroy it. So let's talk about second order consequences. Now, we tend to think in straight lines. We do X and we expect Y to happen. Immediate, direct, obvious, but life doesn't actually work that way. Not at all. Reality works more like a web than a wire. Every choice sends ripples into the future. Some hit fast, some hit later, some hit sideways and bounce back at us when we least expect it. And this is what second order thinking is all about, realizing that the thing you're doing now might not hit you today, but it will hit you eventually. And when it does, it might look nothing like what you thought. This is what most people don't understand. If you don't train yourself to see that, you're going to keep getting blindsided. You'll keep saying things like, I don't know why this keeps happening to me, or I did everything right, or it made sense at the time, when in reality, you just didn't zoom out far enough. First order consequences are usually easy to see. They're loud, they're fast, they're obvious. You eat cake, it tastes good. You skip the gym, nothing really happens that day. You sleep in, you feel a little more rested. That's the surface layer. It's what your brain tracks by default. But there's the problem. Most of the damage you do doesn't show up at this layer. It shows up later. It shows up downstream after the patterns have stacked. Not after one skipped workout, but after 20, even if they're not consecutive. Not after one dopamine binge, but after months of training your nervous system to crave the path of least resistance. And the delay is the deception. And that's what makes second order consequences so dangerous. Because the cost doesn't show up right away. You think you got away with it. You feel like the system didn't punish you. You think you're safe until you're not. Until it's way too late to course correct without pain. And the same principle works in reverse, and this is where it gets very powerful. First order consequences of good choices are actually usually annoying. They're boring, they're painful, they're repetitive. You meditate and it feels like nothing happened. You journal and it just feels like the brain fog on paper. You eat clean and you miss the sugar high. That's the price of playing long-term games. But second order rewards compound, and they always show up eventually, and they're always bigger. Clarity, focus, discipline, resilience, that inner calm you can't fake, that edge that other people can't explain, that calm confidence that comes from knowing you're not just winging it anymore. And just as you can see on the image, you take an action and over time, the first order consequences are obvious, immediate, and short-lived. The second order consequences are delayed, hidden, and compounding. Whether those are good or bad doesn't matter. So this is also why so many people fix the wrong things. They change tactics, switch strategies, fire coaches, restart routines, change relationships. They assume that the thing they're doing isn't working when in reality it was working the whole time. They just didn't wait long enough to see the second order reward kick in. Most people misdiagnose the delay. They think no result means wrong method. But more often than not, it just means they bailed before the compound interest of effort could mature. They confused silence for failure when it was just the system still loading. Every action has invisible echoes. You skip the hard thing today, and that ripple effect will show up somewhere. It might be in your body, it might be in your bank account, it might be in your relationships. You don't always get to choose where the consequence lands, but it will land. Second order thinking gives you leverage, because once you start thinking this way, you realize that everything actually counts. Everything you do now either helps or haunts you later, and there are no neutral moves. You're either setting off a chain reaction in your favor or one against you. And everything is a boomerang. It just depends on how long it takes to come back around. Some come back in minutes, some in months, some take years, some take decades, but none of them disappear. They always return to the sender, and when they do, they won't ask if you're ready. And this is the lens the world is missing. Everyone is optimizing for short-term dopamine. Fast feedback, first-order comfort, but real power that lives in the second order realm. That's where the compounding curve lives. That's where momentum lives, and that's where things actually get built. This matters even more once you realize how your own memory starts betraying you the further down the timeline you go. Because the longer you play, the less you remember what even got you here in the first place. And if you're not careful, you'll forget the cause and curse the effect. So let's talk about the hidden mechanics of memory. Now, memory is the invisible hand that basically shapes how you interpret your entire life. You don't just act based on logic or intention or emotion. You act based on what you remember as well. And what's wild is that your memory isn't just selective, it's warped. You remember memories of memories. It distorts timelines, exaggerates emotion, filters out context, and deletes the most important part of your transformation, which is the early stages. Which is exactly why most people sabotage themselves before they ever hit escape velocity. Memory decays faster than results actually arrive. And you can remember what you did this morning, maybe yesterday, maybe even last week if it was dramatic. But what about the decision you made 6 months ago or 5 years ago? That random Tuesday night you decided to skip the junk food and stretch instead? That's gone. Your brain already filed it under irrelevant. Now, when the benefits of that small choice start to show up a year later, you don't even associate them with anything you actually did. And that's how people lose track of their cause and effect chain. They think they got lucky, or worse, that nothing they do really matters. And that's how people also see other people. They think other people got lucky when they get the results they wanted, not even seeing that these people might have done something over 5 years or 10 years that basically caused the success. And memory isn't just foggy, it's biased. You remember the failures louder than the wins. And that one time you skipped the gym, it probably got burned into your mind. The 20 days you showed up is blurred into one vague, I tried. This causes a distorted self-image. You think you're inconsistent and undisciplined when in reality, you've been way more disciplined than you give yourself credit for. You're just not looking at those things. The more emotional a moment, the more it sticks, which means chaos leaves deeper grooves in your memory than calm consistency ever will. And so you get used to your progress so fast that you forget it ever felt hard. And what was once impossible now becomes your baseline. You used to dread waking up early, and now you do it automatically. Whether you want to or not, you do it. But since it feels easy now, your brain downplays how far you've come. And usually when something starts to feel easy, we begin to see it as less valuable, unfortunately. And that amnesia robs you of motivation because it feels like you haven't really changed, like you haven't gotten any progress for all the effort you've put in, when in truth, you've completely transformed. Forgetting your own growth makes you restless. It makes you chase more faster now, even when you're already ahead. And because of memory gaps, people wrongly assume their current results are disconnected from their past behavior. You start succeeding, but you forget the work that built that momentum. So you loosen up, you start skipping the rituals, and then the results start to fade, and you don't know why. And this creates a cycle of building, forgetting, slipping, crashing, and starting over again. You're not undisciplined, you're just misremembering. Most people never give themselves the credit where it's due. They forget the weeks they showed up when nobody clapped, the habits that they built in the dark, the hours that they logged with no feedback, no applause, no proof. Without that memory of earned progress, motivation dries up and you start to feel like nothing's actually working, even though it absolutely is. That's why journaling, tracking, and reviewing are essential. If you don't record your journey, your brain will just erase it. So you think life is happening to you now without realizing it's just your past decisions echoing back at you. This leads to blame, and you blame your boss, you blame your partner, you blame the economy, your parents, your circumstances, because you genuinely don't remember the chain of decisions and actions that got you here. And if you don't remember, how could it be your fault? And that mindset kills progress. You'll never fix what you're still outsourcing. The more conscious you are of how memory works, the more power you have over your future. So start tying visible progress to invisible decisions as much as possible. When something goes right, trace it back. When something feels off, reverse engineer it. This creates pattern awareness, and you begin to see what's causing your results and, more importantly, what's not, or what's hindering them. You stop second guessing every quiet day of work. You just trust that even if you forget what you did, nature doesn't. And you can't afford to rely on memory alone. You actually need tools. So write things down, track your workouts, log your routines, document the decisions you're proud of, even the tiny ones. It's actually baffling how people do it in certain areas of their life and they don't do it at all in others. For example, in the fitness world, it's completely okay and normal, and it's just accepted that we all track our workouts. But for some reason, we don't do that in other areas of our lives. So, as I said, write things down, track your workouts, log your routines, document the decisions you're actually proud of, even the tiny ones, and build a habit of looking back weekly, monthly, quarterly, or even yearly. And ask yourself what's actually working, what's compounding, what needs to change, and be brutally honest. These anchors reconnect your present with your past, and they prevent you from throwing away momentum just because you forgot how you built it. Now, understanding memory gives you a ridiculous edge because now when the rewards finally show up, you remember why. You stay grateful, you stay focused, you don't fall for the illusion that it was luck or randomness. You just know it was built. And when life feels slow, you don't panic. You know the seeds are still under the soil, still growing, still working, you just haven't seen them bloom yet. And once you've trained yourself to trust both the process and your own memory, once you stop reacting to momentary noise and start tracking your actual patterns, then you're ready to really play the game of life. Because now you're ready to zoom out, look at the full curve, and start consciously steering toward the life you actually want. So with that being said, let's go over the review. We talked about the truth about time, we talked about the trap of short-term thinking, the law of compounding choices, second-order consequences, the hidden mechanics of memory, the review, and your action items for the day or the next few days. First, write down the habits, routines, and rituals you're actually building, and don't rely on memory to validate your consistency. Use physical proof so your brain can't gaslight you. And commit to doing one hard thing every day that won't pay off for at least 6 months. And train yourself to be okay with the wait. The delay is the filter that separates the winners from the wishers. And finally, revisit this training weekly. Burn it into your head. Every decision compounds. Every action echoes. So play long, stay sharp, and let the rest fall behind. With that being said, thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, comment below, subscribe for more. If you want to work with me personally, book a call from the second link in the description. And if you want this document, join the free community from the first link in the description. With that being said, again, thank you for being here, and I'm going to see you in the next one.